The Liking of Oneself by Carl Rogers. On Becoming a Person, a Therapist's View of Psychotherapy. In various writings and researches that have been published regarding client-centered therapy, there has been a stress upon the acceptance of self as one of the directions and outcomes of therapy. We have established the fact that in successful psychotherapy, negative attitudes toward the self decrease and positive attitudes increase. We have measured the gradual increase in self-acceptance and have studied the correlated increase in acceptance of others. But as I examine these statements and compare them with our more recent cases, I feel they fall short of the truth. The client not only accepts himself, a phrase which may carry the connotation of a grudging and reluctant acceptance of the inevitable, he actually comes to like himself. This is not a bragging or self-assertive liking, it is rather a quiet pleasure in being oneself. Mrs. Oak illustrates this trend rather nicely in her 33rd interview. Is it significant that this follows by 10 days the interview where she could for the first time admit to herself that the therapist cared? Whatever our speculations on this point, this fragment indicates very well the quiet joy in being oneself, together with the apologetic attitude which, in our culture, one feels it is necessary to take towards such an experience. In the last few minutes of the interview, knowing her time is nearly up, she says, "See, one thing worries me, and I'll hurry because I can always go back to it, a feeling that occasionally I can't turn out. Feeling of being quite pleased with myself." Again the cue technique. Asterisk, I walked out of here one time, and impulsively I threw my first card. I am an attractive personality. Looked at it sort of aghast, but left it there. Because honestly, that is exactly how it felt. Well, that bothered me and I catch that now. Every once in a while a sort of pleased feeling, nothing superior, but just, I don't know, sort of pleased. A neatly turned way. And it bothered me. And yet, I rarely remember things I say here. I wondered why it was that I was convinced, and something about what I felt about being hurt that I suspected in my feelings when I would hear someone say to a child, "Don't cry." I always felt, but it isn't right. If he's hurt, let him cry. Well, then, now this pleased feeling that I have. I've recently come to feel, there's something almost the same there. We don't object when children feel pleased with themselves. There really isn't anything vain. Maybe that's how people should feel. You've been inclined almost to look askance at yourself for this feeling, and yet as you think about it more, maybe it comes close to the two sides of the picture, that if a child wants to cry, why shouldn't he cry? And if he wants to feel pleased with himself, doesn't he have a perfect right to feel pleased with himself? And that sort of ties in with this, what I would see as an appreciation of yourself that you've experienced every now and again. CCCC said, yes. Yes. TTTT said, I'm really a pretty rich and interesting person. CCCC said, something like that. And then I say to myself, our society pushes us around and we've lost it. And I keep going back to my feelings about children. Well, maybe they're richer than we are. Maybe it's something we've lost in the process of growing up. TTTT said, could be that they have a wisdom about that we've lost. CCCC said, that's right. My time's up. Here she arrives, as do so many other clients, at the tentative, slightly apologetic realization that she has come to like, enjoy, appreciate herself. One gets the feeling of a spontaneous relaxed enjoyment, a primitive joie de vivre, perhaps analogous to the lamb frisking about the meadow or the porpoise gracefully leaping in and out of the waves. Mrs. Oak feels that it is something native to the organism, to the infant, something we have lost in the warping process of development. Earlier in this case, one sees something of a forerunner of this feeling, an incident which perhaps makes more clear its fundamental nature. In the 9th interview, Mrs. Oak, in a somewhat embarrassed fashion, reveals something she has always kept to herself. That she brought it forth at some cost is indicated by the fact that it was preceded by a very long pause, of several minutes' duration. Then she spoke. CCCC said, you know, this is kind of goofy, but I've never told anyone this. Nervous laugh, and it'll probably do me good. For years, probably from early youth, From 17 probably on, I have had what I have come to call to myself, told myself were flashes of sanity. I've never told anyone this. Another embarrassed laugh. We're in really I feel sane. And pretty much aware of life. And always with a terrific kind of concern and sadness of how far away, how far astray that we have actually gone. It's just a feeling once in a while of finding myself a whole kind of person in a terribly chaotic kind of world. TTTT said, it's been fleeting and it's been infrequent, but there have been times when it seems the whole you is functioning and feeling in the world, a very chaotic world to be sure. CCCC said, that's right. And I mean, and knowing actually how far astray we've gone from being whole healthy people. And of course, one doesn't talk in those terms. TTTT said, a feeling that it wouldn't be safe to talk about the singing you asterisk. CCCC said, where does that person live? TTTT said, almost as if there was no place for such a person to exist. CCCC said, of course, you know, that makes me, now wait a minute, that probably explains why I'm primarily concerned with feelings here. That's probably it, TTTT, because that whole you does exist with all your feelings. Is that it? You're more aware of feelings. CCCC, that's right. It's not, it doesn't reject feelings, and that's it. TTTT, that whole you somehow lives feelings instead of somehow pushing them to one side. Pause 0.2 seconds. CCC, that's right. Pause. I suppose from the practical point of view it could be said that what I ought to be doing is solving some problems, day-to-day problems. And yet, what I'm trying to do is solve something else that is a great deal more important than little day-to-day problems. Maybe that sums up the whole thing. TTTT. I wonder if this will distort your meaning, that from a hard-headed point of view you ought to be spending time thinking through specific problems, but you wonder if perhaps maybe you aren't on a quest for this whole you, and perhaps that's more important than a solution to the day-to-day problems. CCCC. I think that's it. That's probably what I mean. If we may legitimately put together these two experiences, and if we are justified in regarding them as typical, then we may say that both in therapy and in some fleeting experiences throughout her previous life, she has experienced a healthy, satisfying, enjoyable appreciation of herself as a whole and functioning creature, and that this experience occurs when she does not reject her feelings but lives them. Here it seems to me is an important and often overlooked truth about the therapeutic process. It works in the direction of permitting the person to experience fully, and in awareness, all of his reactions including his feelings and emotions. As this occurs, the individual feels a positive liking for himself, a genuine appreciation of himself as a total functioning unit, which is one of the important end points of therapy. Thanks for listening. For more content like this, please comment, like, and subscribe.